Welcome back to Reliving Retro. This is Season 6, Episode 2. And if you're new here, we pick one game at random, invite a guest on to play it, and rate it with us on a scale of 0 to 5 stars per 5 categories: story, gameplay, visuals, sound, and how well it aged. And we have a very special guest on with us today, and I'll allow them to introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Les Dewitt. I just do silly little TikToks about video games and think about hopping back onto YouTube because now I actually have some ideas. So
Nice.
Cool.
Sounds good. Can't wait to see him. Check him out on TikTok. He's got some great content on there. And if you're new here with us, we have a Patreon for only $2 a month. You can go ahead and put your game that you want us to play. We do a Patreon game every single month. So episodes 4, 8, and 12 of every single season is a Patreon week. And it's the quickest way for you to get your game played. And you can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, TikTok, Spotify if you're watching on YouTube, and we're on YouTube if you're listening on Spotify. And then you can go ahead and follow us on Twitch, where we normally play the game of the week on there. One of us streams it, either me or Yaiser. It's been a little sluggish for the past few weeks, but we'll get back on there at some point. Yeah, life and family. Life happens. But anyway, getting to know Les a little bit here. What would you say your introduction to gaming was?
The original NES. When I wasn't chewing on the cable and my brother smacking me to make me stop, he was letting me think that I was participating with the unplugged second controller.
Perfect.
That's probably why Luigi is my favorite Mario character.
Nice.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. So every time I see Luigi, I just taste the little bits of Nintendo controller rubber in my mouth. Nostalgia.
Right. What would you say some of your favorite types of games to play are?
Yeah, it jumps around a little bit. I mean, it's usually depending on what I feel like. I'm a sucker for like the open world, Fallout, Skyrim, Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom type stuff, where it's like the game just opens up and goes, go. And I'm like, You do what? Whatever. I'm also pretty fond of fighting games, although not too great at them. I can beat the people on my block, but beyond that, I get stomped.
I'm awful at fighting games. Like, I can barely beat computers. I don't know why. I don't know what it is about fighting games in general, like any Street Fighters or Mortal Kombats or Tekkens or anything like that. I'm terrible.
Tekken, I get killed in Tekken. I played that game for years. I get owned. I tell everybody, if there's any fighting game you could beat me in, it's Tekken. Yeah. I do have one bragging right thing under my belt regarding fighting games. I was in a tournament at a convention of I think it was 12 people, and I actually got second place in King of Fighters 15.
Nice.
The guy who beat me had his own sticks, and I leaned into my wife going, that's probably the guy who's gonna win.
Yeah.
It's a good assumption there.
Yeah, it's fair to say. I would say the best fighting game. How do I say this without sounding dumb? Too late, right? The fighting game that I'm the best at is probably Budokai. I love the Dragon Ball Z Budokai games.
Yeah,
they're sick. I love those ones. I've had some pretty epic battles with my buddy. See, I'm like a Vegeta guy, and he's like a hardcore Goku dude. And so we had to have those battles out. But what games have you played lately?
Oh, geez. Well, I sacrificed over 300 hours of my life in Tears of the Kingdom.
I really thought you were going to say for Golden Axe, and I was like, that's too many hours, buddy. You didn't need to do that many.
I needed to play for every pixel on the screen. Lately I've been jumping into small little DS games here and there because I'm trying to explore the DS library a little bit, because I know there's a lot of stuff I missed out on because I had a PSP instead of a DS. But I like to explore retro stuff. Usually I'll hear about something, I'll try it out. But I think the last thing I was playing before Tears of the Kingdom was Twisted Metal.
Yeah,
because after we it was funny, like after the podcast that we did Twisted Metal, the next day the trailer or that teaser was announced. And then all of a sudden, just a week or so later, they re-released Twisted Metal 1 and 2 on PS4 and 5, and I played the heck out of those. I platinumed both the 4 and the 5 PlayStation.
Wow.
Nice. It's weird sometimes how it lines up like that, because I had no idea that TV show thing was coming out, or that they were going to re-release the games. It just happened to be, that was what was picked that week.
Yeah, I thought it was still in development hell. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've been playing Sea of Stars. Have you checked that one out at all?
Sea of Stars?
Yeah, so it's an RPG made by Sabotage Studios. It's very good. It's very much it's very similar to like Chrono Trigger and like Super Mario RPG. Like, has a lot of elements of those two games.
Okay, you know what? I don't know anything about it, but I'm in like a bunch of Facebook groups for Chrono Trigger and stuff like that. They were talking about something about Sea of Stars. They're like, stop posting about Sea of Stars. It's a Chrono Trigger group, and I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's very good. Me and my daughter have probably put about 15 or so hours into it since it came out last Tuesday. So
It's like a classic style JRPG.
Yep. Yeah, it's very good. Yaiser, what have you been playing?
Oh, brother, I tell you, nothing really, to be honest with you.
You said you got back into Elden Ring a little bit, right?
A little bit. I haven't played in a couple weeks, so yeah, just trying to get ready for the DLC coming out, and I don't want to do it on New Game Plus, so gotta start a whole new fucking a whole new playthrough. But that's fine. It's okay.
You're gonna have a great time with it, I think.
I'm sure.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right. This week's game was Golden Axe for the Sega Genesis. Now, Yaiser, did you have any experience to this game prior to this week?
No, zero.
Had you heard of it at all?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I don't think so.
What about you, Les?
Yeah, I would. If you ever wondered who keeps buying those Sega Genesis collections, who the hell is keeping them in business? It's probably me. So like I got the one on PS3, and I completed all the games on. Well, not completed, but I played all the games on there. I never really played Golden Axe as a kid, but I kind of discovered it in the new era, and I was like, oh, okay, and it just kind of kept popping up in all these collections, and I would just keep playing it.
Very nice.
Cool.
Yeah, I actually downloaded the Sega Genesis collection on my Switch, so I'm also guilty of keeping those people in business. But that one is pretty awesome because it kind of like sets you up in a room with a TV, and you see the Sega Genesis underneath the TV, and then to the right is like the rack of games, and you can go through all the games and pick out which one you want to play and stuff.
Yeah, the PS4 one. Yeah,
it's a very cool setup. I like that one a lot. But anyway, so I played Golden Axe on there. I also played Golden Axe a ton as a kid because it was on the very first game I ever got, which was called the 6-pack for the Genesis.
Oh.
So Golden
Columns
Axe
on there too, I think.
Yep, Columns, Sega. What was it? Sonic the Hedgehog, Super Road Rash, or something like that, or just Road Rash. There was another one.
So wasn't
obviously
Shinobi
there were
3 also on there
them.
too?
Yeah, Shinobi was on there. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but the ones that I played for sure the most were Sonic, Columns, and Golden Axe. But so I played it a decent amount as a kid. I never got further than stage 2 or 3, I don't think, because it was tough for me as a kid. As an adult, I didn't get any further than stage 2 or 3, I think. Yaiser, how far did you get?
I got to the end of stage 5. Those dual red knights are pretty tough.
Nice. You're actually not that far. There's only 8 stages.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What about you, Les?
I got probably up to Death Adder himself, or that stage. I got to, I think, what was that, stage 6 or something? It's where you get off that flying eagle village or whatever.
Yep.
And I can't remember where I lost, but I actually replayed it again. But I did the easier mode because you could just go to options and increase your gauge, and I'm like, well, I kind of want to get a little further. So I played it again with a bigger gauge, and I got up to Death Adder, and I actually beat Death Adder. Nice. Admittedly, cheesed him.
Hey, however you got to do it.
Yeah, I just ran this way, attacked, ran back that way, ran this way, attacked. Every time he kept getting up, and then
that sounds like strategy to me.
Yeah, and then I found out if you do like the running jump attack, it actually could like kill skeletons even in one hit. And I was like, I'm just gonna spam that on this guy while he's doing his little electric fist thing.
Yeah,
And then
that's
right
pretty cool.
after that, the extra level, I don't know what to call it, but where they're like, oh, he was not the big bad after all. There's someone in this door. I died 2 seconds after getting in that door. Got a game over.
That's funny. All right, let's start with story here. I'll kick it off. So, story, I mean, at least for me, isn't too crazy, but I'm gonna give it props a little bit because, well, it basically just starts off with a simple text box, basically saying like Death Adder has invaded, what's the place called? Turtle Village or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, basically is like it invaded Turtle Village. He took the king and the princess hostage, and he also killed my friend Alex or whatever that guy's name was. And so I'm just like, okay, I guess it's like a premise. You know what I mean? That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But where it scores a little bit more points for me is after every level, and it kind of does the whole Castlevania thing where it shows like you progress in the map, and then it gives you like a little bit more story. And while I didn't find the story like incredibly riveting by any means, I felt like including those little like, I guess, cutscene story fragments, I guess you could call them, in the middle of each level, I thought was pretty good for what's essentially just a side scrolling beat 'em up action hack and slash type of game.
Yeah.
So I kind of just landed at a 2.5 for story because, like I said, I didn't really find the story crazy, but what they did to kind of keep you in the loop, I thought was pretty good. What about you, Les?
Yeah, I thought the story to me was, I mean, I'm not, I wouldn't be asking for a lot of this game coming out in like 89,
Right.
But it definitely had that kind of generic sword and sorcery kind of story, like bad guy have royal people, go save royal people, you serve them, attack village, friend died, and it kind of at first you're just like, okay, it's generic sword and sorcery, and then as it kind of goes on, now you're on the back of a turtle village, you're flying on this eagle village, and it's like these cool little things here and there, kind of unique and imaginative.
Mm-hmm.
But like overall, it was just kind of like a couple of cool things amidst a pretty basic story, a very vanilla kind of story. I also gave it a 2.5.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a fair score. What about you, Yaiser?
Pretty fair. I had it a little tiny bit higher, and I'll tell you why.
Oh, 2.51.
No, I've had it at 3. I put it at 3. If you just let the menu screen play,
yep,
it like brings up like each character. Well, throw their name up there, like what race they are, like the chick, she's an Amazon, and it gives you a little backstory about why they want revenge on the Death Adder or whatever. Like,
that's cool. I didn't know that.
I don't remember specifically, but like, I think like he killed the chick's father and like the dwarf, somebody related to the dwarf as well. So that's why they're in there to get him back. So I thought that was pretty cool too. So I gave it a 3.
All right, that's fair. Yeah, if I knew that, maybe I would have bumped it up a little bit. But when the start menu comes up, I just hit start. I just start playing the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird, but that's what I do.
Well, that's the other reason why. The only reason why I learned that I need to figure out how to fucking run and do running attacks is because it does like cutscenes from the game in between like the little description things. So I'm like, oh, I can run. Gotta figure that out.
Yeah, it's the whole Evo thing where it's double tap a directional pad. I can't stand it. It makes more sense for Genesis because the controller's more limited than the Super Nintendo. But for Evo, it was so broken to me because they could have easily used the shoulder button.
Yeah,
because the shoulder buttons didn't do anything in that game. But anyway, not to get on the whole Evo.
You roll that into gameplay, I guess.
Yeah, not to get in a whole Evo rant, but let's roll right into gameplay here. Yaiser, why don't you kick it off?
So I started playing on my phone, but I left my my Kishi in Perry's truck, so I didn't have that. I was playing with touchscreen. I kept hitting the wrong fucking buttons, and I couldn't figure out why I was like rolling around. I realized I'm hitting 2 buttons at once. It felt awful. And then I was telling you like I fucking suck at this game. I can't figure out how to get good. Like, it's on the Switch, you fucking idiot. Play it on there. Like, oh, okay. You didn't say that, but that's how I felt. And it was controlled
It's
so
what I
much better.
thought, to be fair.
I believe you. Yeah. Yeah, but it controlled so much better when I had actual buttons. But still, I thought, just because only thing that I really didn't like was the sprint thing, first of all.
Sprint
And
suck.
like,
Yep.
I feel like it would have been better if it was just, there wasn't like the third dimension added to it,
Mhm.
where you can like walk up and down the screen, because it was so
Yep.
hard to hit people sometimes. You have to be like perfectly lined up. I think it would have been better if it was just like a flat like 2D plane. I think this game would have been a little better.
Yeah,
But
it definitely would have been easier for sure.
definitely. But I gave it a 3.5. I also want to mention stun locks really pissed me off.
It's the worst part about the game. The
Mhm.
absolute worst part of the game, unless I see it looks like you agree, so I'll let you jump in there.
Yeah, I hated it sometimes because like I'll get up over here, get knocked over here, get up over here, get knocked over here, and I'll be a volleyball between two enemies, and I'll actually get frustrated. And once I die, I'm just like, okay, I'm not gonna get caught in that scenario again. And then next thing you know, they're coming up. They cheesed really bad. They were so cheesed in this game because, like, I played the arcade one, and how is it that the Genesis one, the AI is cheaper than the arcade that wants your quarters?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough. I found that the easiest way to get through a level is to get on whatever animal vehicle thing whatever, whether it's a dinosaur or that pink thing with the swingy tail. I don't know what they're called, but you want to get on those, and then you can demolish anybody in your way. However, getting on one of those can be very, very difficult if there's multiple enemies near you, and then you just get stun locked the whole time, and then the animal runs away, and you're just like, okay, now I'm dead, essentially. Yeah, it's rough. Would you give gameplay, Les?
I gave it a 4.
Okay, cool.
Honestly, it would be probably even a 5 if it wasn't for the little cheap things here and there, because it's a very simple game, and what it does well. The only thing that goes really against it is that it was one of the first of its kind when it came to like the beat 'em up, that belt action. So that kind of goes against it because it was before all these cool things you can do. And one of the worst things about the gameplay for me was the depth, like the up and down, where I hit an enemy and literally I'll go for a really strong strike, the running strike or something like that, or running jump strike, and they'll just scoot. They'll just like, boop. All it takes is one pixel over, and I'll go right through them and miss.
Yeah, it was fucking pain in the ass, and it always
The
seemed
magic.
like
Go ahead.
Go
The
ahead,
magic, though, I found that really rewarding. If you saved all that up and you could get this big summon or something like that.
Yeah. So that's a good point too. So Yaiser, who did you play with?
I played as the dwarf, so my magic wasn't as cool as the other guys.
Well, he
But
has the
my
lightning,
axe
right?
was yeah, but it's only got like 3 levels, and it's not like. Yeah, it wasn't definitely wasn't as cool as like the chick's like highest magic.
Oh my god,
whatever
dude!
that is.
Her dragon.
Yeah,
bro, that shit looked crazy.
Yeah, that looked awesome. So I played this by myself primarily. I played it for about an hour and a half by myself. I also played it a little bit with my wife and my daughter. Now, my wife used the dwarf because she just figured he had a big axe and then chop people up with the big axe. And then my daughter used the Amazon lady, and she absolutely loved using the magic with her. So it was cool to see. And again, this is always something that I feel like reflects age pretty well, but my daughter was able to hold her attention span on it for a decent amount of time, and that always to me speaks pretty positively on aged, but we'll get to that. But as far as gameplay goes, I felt like the gameplay in itself is just really simplistic, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Les, you're right, it's one of the first of its kind, so it should be rewarded for that and not punished for that. You know what I mean? However, I did find it pretty clunky, and I don't know if that's just early Sega Genesis days or if that's just early beat 'em up days or what, but it did feel pretty clunky, and the stun locks is way too frustrating to overlook. I landed on a 3.5, which I felt like was low considering how much fun you could have with this game if you're good at it. Like I said, you jump on one of those dinosaurs and you're just breathing fire all over everybody and flying through these levels. I watched a playthrough of it because I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through to the boss. So I watched a playthrough of it, and it just seemed like super easy if you were able to clear out an area where an animal is, and then just jump on that animal and then kill everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think 3.5 is fair, especially considering the limitations at the time, which limitations are something that I'm going to get into quite a bit coming up here. But if we're good for gameplay, Les, you can kick it off for visuals.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the that it's got that Genesis spice to it, where it's pretty typical looking for a Genesis, but it's not like an eyesore. It's not bad.
Yeah.
I was surprised by some of the art in the game, like when you're leaving that eagle village and you could see the eagle's head, and I was looking at that going like, this was 1989. That's not bad.
Right.
Or the dragon's head was surprisingly detailed, even though it was just a head. It was like, oh, this is 1989.
Yeah.
You know, the magic attacks, especially at max, were spectacles. But what really killed it was the enemy and levels were pretty generic. Because you go to another stage, the enemies would be harder, but it's just a palette swap of the same bald guy and the same helmeted guy, you know, or the big bald guy, but now he's like blue, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the levels, it was like what? Village, fort, cave, you know.
Yeah.
They all looked good, but you know.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton there as far as variety goes. Would you land on for a score?
3.
I'm right there with you, I think. I did think the big sprites were what impressed me most about this game. Like you brought up, like the dragon's head looks amazing. I thought, I don't know, Death Adder just sounds like something that's going to be like amazing to see, right? And then you get to him, and it just looks like one of the knights, but different colors.
Yeah,
like that was pretty disappointing. I thought that was a huge, like, as far as like character design goes, supposed to be like the big bad throughout the game, like that's all anybody's talking about. And he looked just like the Red Knight except different colors, and you're just like, was that it? Was that all you were doing there? Okay. That's a little disappointing. However, that's not my biggest gripe with the game at all. My biggest gripe with the game is exactly what Les said. It's the areas, it's the levels. It's weird because the sprite work was so good for 89, but also the backgrounds didn't look like a 16-bit system to me. It looked like kind of a in between, like 8-bit and 16, some sort of 12-bit system. I don't know. I don't think they made one, but somewhere between like an NES and like a Super Nintendo kind of deal. You know what I mean? Like it looked like they had like 16-bit characters on an 8-bit background. I just thought it was really underwhelming, the background portion of it. But again, the character work was so good, especially for 89, that I had to give it a 3.25, because I couldn't quite give it the 3.5, but I felt like it was a little bit more deserving. Like a little bit higher than a 3, I guess. But what would you have on it, Yaiser?
I had it at 3.
3, okay.
The saving factor, definitely being the magic, was probably the best looking part of the game.
Yep. I kind of forgot to bring that up, but yeah, the magic effects looked really good.
Yeah, that's crazy, honestly. But my biggest problem was that all the enemies were, not only were they reskinned, just different colors, but the whole enemy from helmet to boots to skin color was just one fucking color. I couldn't have gave him like maybe a different shade of like boots.
Like there were white skeletons and red skeletons, and they didn't
even their weapons, dude, were the same color as them. That was what bothered me the most. So.
They legit look like the Green Army men that you'd get in like a bucket.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
all green. They had no detail whatsoever.
Right.
They were all made in a creepy crawly machine.
Yeah.
There you go.
They're like, ooh, now I got a blue one.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, visuals obviously, I don't think it blew anybody away here. Some of the effects I thought looked really cool. There were some things that I think pushed the early limitations of the Genesis, with some of the magic effects and stuff like that. But really, when it came down to just, I think it's huge in beat 'em ups to have like a massive enemy selection, right? Like a big difference between enemies from stage to stage, because otherwise it's just like, really, how many enemies did you face other than like Death Adder? I mean, you could even include him since he looks like the other knights, but like six, maybe seven or eight or something like that, like total
maybe.
enemies. If you're not counting the animals, there's not a lot.
No, not a little.
So yeah, I think that's definitely one of the worst parts about the game. But to me, I think one of the worst parts about the game, which is, it's very conflicting for me, but I'll kick off sound. I love the music in this game. Some of the Golden Axe themes are just, especially if you look if you look up like metal versions of them, they're so good. They translate to metal so well. And even, I don't know if you guys have played this game before, but they have like it's Sonic All-Star Team Racing or whatever for like the Wii U. They have a Golden Axe level in that game, and they have a remastered version of the Golden Axe theme song, and it's so good. It sounds so amazing. Yeah, so the Golden Axe songs, for what it's worth, sound really good. Level 6 is good. Level 8 against Death Adder, that one is also very good. And then obviously like the intro sounds awesome and epic, and then the first level sounds cool. But the sound effects are awful. They sound so bad, and I can't get past them. Like the limitations of the Genesis, the early Genesis, I don't know if it's like, I don't know what was going on, but they couldn't do more than one sound effect at a time. Like if the magic went off, you couldn't hear anything. Sometimes there was no sound when your magic went off. And then other times, like if you're killing somebody, like you're hearing like the scream, but then like all the other sound effects stop. I don't know. They couldn't do two sound effects at once, and that was driving me crazy. Also, the sound effects kind of sounded like just like some random person made them. Like it didn't sound like just made them with their like mouth. Like whenever somebody would fall, it'd just be like the dum dum, like, and that was it. That was just like the sound of somebody falling, and I'm like, okay. And then the scream. Does anybody want to give that scream a shot? Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It's just like and that's it. And I'm just like,
generic 4.
Yeah.
.mc3.
It's bad. It doesn't even sound like it's coming from the same. It doesn't sound like it's coming from like a video game at all. I don't know. The sound effects were really, really bad. If I was just judging the sound based off the soundtrack, I probably would have given it a 4 or 4.5 because I absolutely love the songs on this on the game. However, you got to consider everything. If I'm just judging the game on sound effects alone, I might be at a 1 or a 1.5. So trying to split the difference here, I gave it a 3, but it was very hard to. That was by far the hardest category for me to score because, like I said, just polar opposites between soundtrack and sound effects. What were your thoughts on that, Les?
I also gave it a 3. The music, it was catchy. It was like I was thinking of the song, like after I was done playing it. I was walking around the house going, you know, like in my head with the music, and like you said, it's night and day with the music and the sound effects, because the music is great, but it's got them Genesis farts for sound effects. You know what I mean? That
and yeah,
you know, all those really. The noises where if you heard them in another room, you'd think somebody was playing Earthworm Jim or Boogerman or something.
Yep.
But like, you know, a lot of generic, you know, noises, and the screams were so bad. It was just, and then if you wanted the female one, you just cranked it up.
Yeah, same noise, just a higher pitch.
Yeah, they just somehow got footage of pterodactyl's vocal cords and put it in the fan. But like, the music was good. So that's why I gave it a 3, is because, like you said, the sound effects alone would have given it like a 1, even for 1989.
It would have been better.
And the music was like a 4.5, a 5, because it was catchy, and if it's catchy, they win. So I compromised with a 3.
Yeah. Okay. So same thought process there. What about you, Yaiser?
I'm right there with you guys.
Landed right on a 3, huh?
Yeah.
We've been all, right around the same thing here for pretty much all of our scores. I'm not too terribly surprised with it, but I did think, Yaiser, I thought you were going to hate this game after your first playthrough with it. I'm glad that you gave the Switch version a chance.
For a while. I did hate it for a couple of minutes there.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the sound was not great. I wasn't having a great time listening to it. I do recommend for sure go check out like some of the soundtracks. There's some guy on YouTube that just uploads every single soundtrack to every single video game ever made, apparently. And so just YouTube Golden Axe OST and you'll find it. It's pretty good. I will say though, some of the Genesis sounds a little off-putting at times. Some of the songs sound a little I don't know, bagpipey, I guess. But it's still pretty good. I would definitely. It's one of my favorite soundtracks of any Genesis game for sure. All right, let's move on to see how well this game has aged. Yaiser, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, sure. I have it down as a 3 for aged.
Okay.
Because it was more than just like playable. It was still pretty fun. It looked kind of like shit, and some of the sounds were pretty shitty, but it was still pretty fun. And there were some aspects about the gameplay that were annoying, but it was still, I think, fun enough to be better than average.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I'm gonna piggyback off you here. I didn't get to 3. I gave it a 2.5, and the biggest reason for me, I think the biggest factor in showing its age was the limitations it had, especially sound wise. Just the backgrounds didn't look great. It definitely looked like an older game. And I forgot to mention this during gameplay, but this affected my score greatly for aged. Even though my daughter could maintain her like attention playing an older game, which I usually give a game a lot of credit for, this game was a terrible 2-player experience. I don't know if you guys have ever played a 2-player, but it was awful because they do this thing where friendly fire exists, and friendly fire in a beat 'em up game makes 0 sense to me. See Battletoads. It's one of the hardest 2-player games of all time because of that. And anytime me or my daughter tried to get on a dinosaur or a dragon or whatever, the other one was also trying to get on, and we would knock each other off of it, and then we would get stuck, and just one of us would die because the enemies would just beat up on us. And even like if I'm trying to save her, I'm hitting her because she's right there. And it was awful. It was a terrible experience with 2 players. So I think that's something that newer games have figured out, like, oh, maybe we should not let teammates hit each other because that's kind of stupid if you think about it. So I gave it a 2.5. I don't think it aged terribly, and I'm trying to also give it benefit for being one of the first of its kind. So I mean, considering all those factors, I think it aged about as well as you would think a Genesis game from 1989 aged. Les, what about you?
I gave it a 3. It's almost 3 across the boards for me, but because it simultaneously aged like milk and wine at the same time. Because it's
good old milk
it's
wine.
Definitely old, and but at the same time it's got that refined from being old where you're like, oh, I'm playing an 80s game. This is kind of nice. Yeah. And it's got that Genesis tang. So you're playing what definitely feels like a Genesis game. So if you want to show your kids a Genesis game, it's a good example. And it's easy to pick up and play, to figure out, hard to master. But like it, in comparison to like the arcade version, it's like in this day and age, if say someone was to emulate one, why not just emulate the arcade one, that's got superior sound, superior visual, superior everything else. The only thing it's missing is the final level, because the arcade one stops at Death Adder. But yeah, it's more like a time capsule. It didn't age well, but like I think that's part of why it's playable like these days, because you can play it because it's old in a way.
I get that.
Yeah, makes sense.
I think it should be said that I don't dislike this game at all. It's actually one of my favorite Sega Genesis games, which maybe is either saying I'm not a big Genesis fan, or is saying that I just need to play more Genesis games. I just need to give them a shot. I had the Genesis as a kid, like I said, but I was always a Super Nintendo kid. I played the Genesis very secondary. The only time I can remember the Genesis being like the primary like gaming console in my house was when we had the Sega channel, and we were getting new games on that thing like every month, and that thing was awesome. That's the only time you could play Golden Axe 3 actually in the States, because that game never came out in the United States. The only time you could play it was on the Sega channel.
I didn't know that.
Awesome. Yeah. Yep. And that was sick. But other than that, I didn't play that much Genesis. So this actually ranks in the top 5 of my Genesis games. And it seems weird that a top 5 Genesis game for me grades out at a 2.95. Which was my roundabout way of kind of getting to our total scores here. So I'm actually the lowest on this game at a 2.95. Yaiser and Les here are both tied at a 3.1. Did not expect you, Yaiser, to have a higher score than I did.
Wow.
At all, really. I don't know how that math worked out. It just
never works.
Sense. No, but it's fine.
I didn't go under 3 for anything.
That's true. I did for story, and then I did for age, so I guess that makes sense. The highest grade it got from anybody was Les gave it a 4 in gameplay, which I think is fair, because we were right there at 3.5.
Yeah.
Now that Golden Axe is over, would you guys recommend that somebody plays this game if they had never played it before? Yaiser?
If you got the Game Pass or whatever, the expansion pass thing on Switch, do it, dude. Yeah, I liked it.
Cool. Les?
Yeah, it's probably one of the most video gamiest video games that you could show someone. And it's since it's like one of the first of its kind, it's like, hey, this is what it was like back then. Have fun.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I actually agree. I do think that I would recommend this game to somebody. I would also just say that I think Golden Axe 2 is better, which I don't think should deter you from playing Golden Axe. I think that you should try and experience the whole series. But yeah, I would say definitely go out and give it a shot. And if you wanted to try and pick it up, it's not a very expensive game either. And as Les said, you can find it on one of the 300,000 Sega Genesis collection games that he also owns. So you can find it pretty easily. And if you have the Switch and you have the expansion pack, like Yaiser has, you have the Sega Genesis for free on there, so you can play it on there.
Super easy.
All right, that's it for Golden Axe. Overall, thought it was pretty decent. It's time to randomize what game we're playing next. You guys ready? All right. We have a racing/driving game developed by EA Black Box, published by EA Games, released on the following platforms: Game Boy Advance, Nintendo GameCube, the PC, the PlayStation 2, the Xbox and the Xbox 360. First released in November of 2003. Les, any guesses?
Oh, geez. I mean, I hear EA and my brain immediately goes Need for Speed.
Which Need for Speed?
See, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, oh gosh. What year was it again?
2003.
Mm-hmm.
Underground 1?
It is, yep. The first
Sick,
Underground.
dude.
Need for Speed Underground 1. Now, Yaiser, you're a big fan of this series, right?
Hell yeah.
What console did you play it for when you played it, like
Xbox.
when it was new? Oh, you played it for the Xbox. Cool.
Mhm.
Is that what you're going to try and play it for? Are you going to try and play it for like PS2, or you're not sure yet?
I don't
GameCube, maybe?
know, dude. I don't know.
You have a pretty good GameCube emulator. Maybe that would be the best one to try it on.
Probably that does work the best.
Les, what did you play it on?
PS2. I would go over to my friend's house all the time and we'd play Need for Speed games.
Yeah, I was also a PS2 guy. PS2 is the last PlayStation console I own. Is that weird? Never owned a 3, never owned a 4, don't have a 5.
I mean, at least you had a 2.
Yeah,
That's
2
the
was
most
the best
important one.
2 is the best one, right? I mean, I had a PSP. I think that came after 2, if we're being, I guess,
Yeah,
technically PSP was the last one, but that doesn't matter. Yeah, so Need for Speed Underground, I'm pretty pumped for it. I haven't played that game in a long time. I actually fired up Underground 2 fairly recently, like within the last couple of years or so, just to kind of like see how it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good time. I also fired up Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition because that was one that I played all the time as a kid. And then I realized that I played a lot of these driving racing games because not just racing, right? There's a lot of like driving around like the city and stuff like that too. So I forgot how much I loved playing Midnight Club. Anyway, that was just a thought I had. But yeah, so Need for Speed Underground, very excited. We're going to have our buddy Caden on for that episode. So be sure to check that one out. And before we leave, Les, do you have anything you'd like to add to our retro recommendation list?
I had one in mind, but I think I'll change it because I had a little bit of inspiration while I was on here. Okay. So I don't know if this gives the hint of what I'm now thinking of.
I mean, I get it, but I think Yaiser's confused.
A little bit.
Pepsi Man for PS1.
Pepsi Man for PS1.
Pepsi Man.
I have heard some things about the game, and I've never played it, but I've heard some things.
It's really not bad. Like people dogged on it because it was, the Burger King games back in the day, but I kind of enjoyed it.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
cool.
So let me write that down. Pepsi Man for PS1. Yaiser, what do you think? What do you think if we tallied our scores? I have to do this probably at the end of season 6 because I think it would be interesting to get the info. If we tallied our scores for each console, what do you think the worst console score-wise would be?
Ooh.
Because it's probably either the N64 or the PS1, right?
Oh God, probably, yeah.
Because that era just ages so poorly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a game from one of those consoles that I absolutely love. Still,
oh God, we'd have to play like Final Fantasy 9 or 7 or something.
I think
much
my
to shovel through.
I think my yeah, right. I think my favorite game that I've played. I don't know. I had a lot of fun with WWF No Mercy, Crash Bandicoot. Just from going through like last season, I think were some pretty decent games. Super Mario 64,
Banjo.
Yeah, okay, Banjo-Kazooie. Yeah, I mean, we've played some good ones for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe
what about Conkers? You played Conkers?
We haven't played Conkers yet. No.
So fun.
Yeah, that one I never got to it. I always remembered seeing like the box art in like Blockbuster and stuff like that, and with this big like warning on it that said like you must be 18 or older to play the game, and I'm like, why? Like
now I'm even more intrigued. Like now I want to play it.
Yeah, why do you need to be older? I didn't even understand like that like mature theme, like what mature themes were. I think it was like 8 or 9. So I was just like, I don't understand how a game like you had to be a certain age to play a game. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I just thought that was really funny.
It wasn't until Grand Theft Auto where I realized why that was a thing.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I remember Grand Theft Auto 3 was like wild to try and get.
Dude.
My mom wouldn't let me get it. We went to Wildwood one time with my grandmother, and she was just like, she had no idea, right? So I kind of took advantage of that, and we stopped at a GameStop on our way home, and I asked for Grand Theft Auto 3, and the guy behind the counter had to tell every single customer what was in the game. He's like, okay, so you know what you can do in this game, right? She's like, no. And I'm like, oh God. And I remember I was
cover.
yeah. Actually, funny enough, they had like a little bin of like old retro games. I wish I knew enough like to grab like super expensive ones at the time, but I grabbed Castlevania for the NES for $5.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. But I remember just like flipping through those as I awkwardly was like eavesdropping the conversation between this GameStop employee and my grandmother, and how he was sitting there telling her, yeah, so you steal cars and you can like get drunk and you can like beat up hookers and low like.
I was gonna ask you if he said hookers or prostitutes.
He said hookers. He went full on. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I had the same experience at a Suncoast, or no, I think it was called like an On Q or something. Because I was from a small town, we didn't have stuff like Suncoast. We had like an On Q, and I was trying to get an uncut Dragon Ball Z VHS, and he was like, "Just so you know, this is the uncut one." It was like one of the Android Saga ones. He's just so you know, it's the uncut one.
I swear.
This one on the back it says may contain violence and brief nudity, and my mom was like, "Yeah, sure." She just thought the brief nudity meant butts or something, and I was just like, whew. And I was looking at the guy like, I'm not coming back here.
Oh man. Yeah, I remember the first time I was watching like one of those uncut ones. My buddy got he had like the Majin Buu saga one, and was it Bobbity, right? Was the one that set Buu free. Bobbity like flips off Goku and tells him to shove it. And I'm like, okay, all right. It's definitely a thing that I just watched in Dragon Ball Z. Because we were watching Toonami at the time, right? So it was just all like the American translation and whatever. And then I think it had stopped after the Cell Saga for a while. And then so we started trying to find like the VHS of the Buu saga because we wanted to know what was going on. And that's what we got. We were pretty disappointed like a year later when that was not included on the Toonami version. But yeah, pretty funny stuff. All right, Les, one last time before we go, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, TikTok, it's Les Dewitt, LESDEWITT, two separate names that look like one big pun. I just have a silly name. And Les Dilemma on Instagram and YouTube. Very
cool. And like I said earlier, guys, we have the Patreon for $2 a month. You can go in there, sign up for that. We really, really appreciate it. And we have Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube. We have a Twitch and TikTok. I think I said them all. I don't know. You figure it out. Everywhere you can post stuff, we post stuff. But that's it for us for this week, guys. Come back next week when we talk about Need for Speed Underground. Until then, take care.
Peace.